Hello and welcome. This is The World Today. I am Oluyemisi Dada. Early warning has saved hundreds of people in rural Mexico from a wildfire. The hot weather has been feeding the flames and also raising health concerns in other regions. The so-called dog head fire, which broke out on Wednesday, has forced evacuations and grown to more than 12,000 acres. It has burned through timber in central New Mexico, pushing heavy smoke towards cities more than 100 miles away. The National Weather Service has issued excessive heat warnings for areas in the U.S. Southwest, including California, Nevada, and Arizona. Temperatures as high as 119 degrees Fahrenheit have been predicted. And still talking wildfire, another bunch of people have been forced to leave their homes in coastal Southern California. Hot weather has also been feeding the flames and raising health concerns in those regions. In Santa Barbara, the occupants of at least 400 homes and businesses in the areas threatened by flames from the fire had been asked to evacuate. Campers and horses on ranches have also been forced out. The blaze, which ignited on Wednesday in the wilderness area northwest of Santa Barbara, has blackened about 1,200 acres of land. About 500 firefighters are trying to stop it raging out of control as airplane tankers and helicopters dropped water. A stabbing attack in a medical clinic in Alberta, Canada has led to the death of one person and injury to many others. Eyewitnesses say the stabbing happened across the hallway of the clinic. Police say there was no immediate indication of a motive and the whereabouts of the attacker is still unknown. Fixed appointment has been cancelled until investigations are concluded. The Canadian Parliament has held a moment of silence for a British Member of Parliament who was shot dead in the street. The incident also caused the suspension of campaign for next week's referendum on the country's EU membership. 41-year-old Joe Cox, a lawmaker for the opposition Labour Party and a vocal advocate for Britain remaining in the European Union, was attacked while preparing to meet constituents in Birstall near Leeds in northern England. A 52-year-old man suspected to be linked with the attack has since been arrested.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in honour of Ms. Jo Cox, United Kingdom Member of Parliament for Batley and Spen. I now invite the House to rise to observe a moment of silence.
Swiss Parliament has invalidated its 1992 application to join the European Union. This happened just a week before the UK decides whether to leave the bloc in a referendum. The upper house of the Swiss Parliament had voted to clarify the current situation of the country's long-standing EU application. And we have joining us now to discuss this development an international relations analyst, Sylvester Odion-Akane. Thank you for joining us. Now, could Switzerland's decision be based on UK?
Because historically, Switzerland appears to enjoy some form of independence, with regard to other European countries, and so they backing out after over more than 20 years application. Shows that probably all is not well with the EU. Because if you look at the Eurozone crisis, particularly as it pertains to Greece, you see that there's a great deal of crisis. Greece ran into trouble with its economy simply because of its membership of the European Union. And Britain, of course, is also raising quite a number of issues. The question about sovereignty. I think Swiss decision was based solely on sovereignty. And Britain, of course, has not been fully with the EU because it's not part of the Schengen, visa, the visa club. And so you still have to apply to go to Britain if you are coming from other country, even when you have a Schengen visa. except for the European citizens who could come into Britain, with some clearance. So I think essentially you have to look at the question of sovereignty to understand why Britain is about exiting. They look at some of the relationship that they have had with the EU, the issue of tariff, the immigration crisis, and all of that. And I think there's a feeling that if they remain independent, of course, they could pull much of their economic affairs, through without much hindrance from other countries.
Explained why Britain may be taking the decision to leave the EU. The decision of Switzerland not to pursue being a part of the EU, could it be based on this decision of the UK? And does it mean that the EU is no longer attractive?
Well, there have been a lot of problems within the European Union. Of course, the Swiss decision is clear if you read, their statement. They are trying to guard jealously their sovereignty. That is basically, what they are trying to do. And Britain, of course, is also trying to guard its sovereignty. It uses the pound, while the rest of the members of the European Union, they use the euro. Now, if you go back to the treaty, or the Maastricht Treaty, there were some social protocol which Britain didn't quite agree with, as it has to do with the workers' relationship with the workers, equal pay, consultation of employees, etc., etc. Britain did not quite agree to those, protocols, and they have objected to it over time. So, which means that while Britain remained within the European Union, those contradictions were always there. That tension, is always there in terms of how much it can exercise in terms of its own sovereignty and what it can subsume within the transnational, authority of the European Union.
Right. What do you think the impact of this withdrawal of Switzerland's parliament? What do you think the influence will be on UK's referendum on whether to remain with the EU or to pull out?
Well, if you look at some of the polls or projections within the European Union, within the UK, it is said that it's going to be too close to call in terms of those who are in for British in or British out of EU. And so, but definitely the Swiss decision is going to have a great deal of influence on what happens in the UK on June 23rd.
And if the UK chooses to remain with the EU, what do you think the impact of that would be? What is the likely impact of either decision, whether to remain or to pull out?
Well, I think that UK remaining within the EU will strengthen, what appears to be some level of Euro skepticism, even within Europe member states, themselves. So Britain coming in, remaining within the EU, will sort of kind of reduce that Euro skepticism, at least in the meantime.
All right, international relations analyst Sylvester Odion-Akine, thank you for joining us on the news.
Thank you for having me.
Moving on now, Liberal White House hopeful Bernie Sanders says he is ready to work with rival Hillary Clinton in order to best presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump. Sanders has declined to bow out of his race against Hillary Clinton, declaring that his political revolution must continue and is urging supporters to help reform the Democratic Party.
The major political task that together we face in the next 5 months is to make certain that Donald Trump is defeated and defeated badly. And I personally intend to begin my role in that process in a very short period of time. But defeating Donald Trump cannot be our only goal. We must continue our grassroots effort to create the America that we know we can become. And we must take that energy into the Democratic National Convention on July 25th in Philadelphia, where we will have more than 1,900 delegates.
Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump says that President Barack Obama is blaming guns for the Orlando shooting, but that he will protect the Second Amendment. Obama had earlier met survivors and relatives of the Orlando gay nightclub shooting and said the United States must act to control gun violence and fight what he called homegrown terrorism. U.S. Senator John McCain said Obama was, quote, directly responsible, out of quote, for attacks on Americans because of policies that contributed to the rise of the Islamic State. But the Arizona Republican later said he misspoke.
Today, we are reminded of what is good, that there is compassion and empathy and decency, and most of all, there is love. That's the Orlando that we've seen in recent days, and that is the America that we have seen. This afternoon, the Vice President and I had the opportunity to meet with many of the families here. As you might imagine, their grief is beyond description. Through their pain and through their tears, they told us about the joy that their loved ones had brought to their lives. They talked about their sons or their daughters. So many young people in their 20s and 30s. So many students who were focused on the future.
ISIS is working very hard to come into the West. They're working very hard to come into our country, and they are working very hard. And you saw what one sleazebag can do. One sleazebag over the weekend, what he did, the horror that he wreaked on us as a nation. One person laughing as he's shooting, doing Facebook posts as he's shooting, calling people as he's shooting, and killing people, and no more, folks, and just no more. And you know, the gay community, the LGBT community, frankly, the LGBT community, these are people that had a place, and this was a place of safety. This is a place where people felt safe.
We have more stories for you after this break. Stay with the World Today on TVC News. You're welcome back. Colombia's President Juan Manuel Santos says the leftist FARC rebel group is prepared to return to the battlefield, especially in urban areas.